This is Dance Studio 411, where we answer your real-life questions about your toughest studio life predicaments. Parent problems, teacher turnover, student challenges, policy dilemmas, and so much more. Let's talk about what's keeping you awake at night and what you can do about it. Here are your hosts, Suzanne Blake Garrity and Jill Tyrone.
Welcome to this episode of the Dance Studio 411 podcast. I'm Jill Tyrone, and today our special guest is Ginger Haithcox, Executive Director of Modern Motion Dance School in Somerset, New Jersey. Our topic today is one that we hear often from our members and is one of the biggest challenges dance studio owners face: finding, hiring, and retaining high-quality staff. In addition to owning Modern Motion Dance School, she is a Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach and a professional photographer. She has been a guest speaker at many conferences, on webinars, and coaching calls and podcasts on various topics, including unique performance groups, costuming, productivity, and so much more. She has created the Certificate of Dance Entrepreneurship program, as well as the Studio Ambassador System for fellow dance studio owners. As you'll hear in this podcast, Ginger is passionate about empowering women business owners by building sustainable businesses through systems. Join us as we explore 3 key topics to help studio owners overcome staffing obstacles and create a thriving work environment. Let's get started. Hi, Ginger. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited you're here today. We are going to talk all things staffing solutions for dance studios. And I read your bio during the intro, but why don't you give our listeners a better understanding of who you are and what you're doing today and how things have come along in your journey with Modern Motion.
Thanks. So I have a studio in New Jersey, and this is our 15th season. And in addition to running the studio, I also have a parallel career in nonprofits and nonprofit management, working with Girl Scouts, in camping industry, churches, doing marketing, all kinds of things. And so one of the things that I learned early on when I was a camp director at the tender age of 25, I had a staff of 150 adults and then another 45 teenagers, and I was running a summer camp. And I had to figure out, how do I manage this staff? Some of these people are 20 years older than me. Some of these people are brand new to the workforce. So both teaching people new to the workforce, the young teenagers, the college students, as well as people who have other careers, and this was just something they did on a part-time basis. I really had to figure out, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn to recruit staff, to manage them, to get the best out of them? And gosh, we've got 1,200 kids walking around an outdoor camp and there's a canal. I don't want anyone to get hurt. And so how do we train them and then trust that they're going to do what they need to do it well, so that if I'm not there, things are okay. What I learned in that environment, in the camping environment, it came over and translated to the studio environment and how I manage staff, how I work with my staff. And I believe that we have a great team at my studio. I had mentioned to you, we have staff who've stayed on for many years. And even after they move on and get a new job, maybe move out of the area, they still come back and they visit us for shows. They still volunteer to do stuff. They'll jump in a pinch, even after they're long gone. And so I thought, you know what, let me share this with other studio owners who could benefit from this information, because it can really be a struggle sometimes just figuring out how to handle staffing.
Absolutely. Your retention rate speaks for itself. That is for sure. So I really want to get started and dive in, because I want to tap into your wealth of knowledge and expertise in both the studio side of things and in your not-for-profit area as well, because they really go hand in hand. And it's really shown you how to manage and keep those staff. And that's really what it's all about, right? Finding the right people and then treating them well and doing the right things so that they want to stay for years to come and come back, like you even mentioned, which is great. So let's get started. Let's first talk about what we're trying to identify here when it comes to staffing solutions, and then how can people get started? Because sometimes we don't even know what we need and when we need it.
Yeah. I like to tell people that if you can think of something that is bothering you in your business that you hate working on, That's a good starting point. And so for some people, it might be, managing money. Maybe it's handling the billing and you need to have someone help with that. Perhaps it is a dance teacher who's teaching the styles that maybe you don't want to teach anymore. Or you feel like, hey, the kids are progressing beyond my skill set. I say to kind of figure out what it is that you need. And so instead of listing out tasks, I would say to take a look at, okay, what process can be passed on to someone else. And the reason I say that is when you think of a process, you think from start to finish, what does this entail versus, oh, I need someone to do one thing. So an example would be costumes, costume management process versus I need someone to measure all the kids for costumes or order costumes. And when you do that, you look at, okay, what is the first thing I need? I need information from the teachers on what the choreography and music looks like, guidance on how to pick something that matches the piece that the children are in. You need sizing. You've got to get the sizing organized somehow in a computer. You also need, okay, what vendors are you working with? What are you going to do? Are they going to buy their own tights or are you ordering them? Picking out all those little pieces along the way until those costumes get delivered, you handle your exchanges, they're fit, the kids take them home. All of that is a whole process. And so that's where you can start and say, hey, I need help with this. I can have someone take over this process. Then you're kind of able to figure out, does this position need to be full-time? Should it be part-time? Do I only need them for 4 months out of the year? Maybe it's something I can just add on to another person's position who's maybe looking for extra hours. I think when you create this list of a process in your studio, it gives you clarity on what the heck you're looking for. Because so many times, like you said, like, we don't even know. We're just like, there's so many things happening. Where do I even begin? And I was talking to someone today who was like, I just wish I could have 4 of me. Because like she knows everything, but there's no one else who can do those things. She was actually saying like she was so afraid that if something happened to her, like what would happen? And that's what we don't want, right? We want our business to be able to keep running if we need time off for something. If there's a death in the family, if you need a really long vacation, if your child's getting married, whatever it is, and you're stepping away, who else can handle those things?
Ginger, I love this so much. I was making a lot of notes as you were speaking. So let's go back. I think what you said about identifying processes rather than just starting with a whole list of tasks that you have, that can be very overwhelming, meaning the task list. The tasks are always going to be there, and there's going to be so many of them, which can be overwhelming. So what I've often shared too is like a friction and flow type of sheet. So if you just take a sheet of paper with a line down the middle, when you mentioned about what you really enjoy doing, what are those things that cause friction? And then what are those things that are really like your flow or your zone of genius? So that may help you identify some of the things that you want to offload as well. And then creating the processes, because we've often said you can't outsource anything that is messy or not laid out in a decent system. So awesome. And then key point that I want to hit home here. Listen, everybody, it's not if, it's when something's going to come up. And like you mentioned, it's important to schedule time for family. It's important to schedule vacations, self-care. But honestly, too, there will be a time where some emergency is going to happen and you need to step away from the studio for a bit. So creating these processes and then staffing well will actually free you up both mentally and physically to be able to do the things that matter most. Awesome. Okay, this is so good. So now we've talked about kind of what success looks like and how we want to identify those processes and move through them. Now we have an idea of what we want to hire for and what's going to be the biggest success area for us. So what do we do to do that? How do we get started?
So now that you've got this list that you've written out of that process that you can delegate to someone, you have a good blueprint for a job description. And before you can list the job, you need a job description to tell people what exactly you need done, who they report to, what their job is, and how that role impacts the organization. So you get your job description. And like most of us, we whip up something and we put it out there and we hope somebody will apply. And What I know is most people, they'll post on maybe one or two websites and hope for the best. And I would say that we can probably do better in that area as well as studio owners. If you have a job description and you want to post it, go ahead and post it to your regular sites. There's free sites, there's paid sites, but also think about letting your population, like your student population, know. I put it in our private Facebook group for our studio, and I let people know, hey, we have a front desk position open. If you know anyone who'd be a great fit, then please encourage them to apply. And then we just have a link to the job description. I always make it a PDF so anybody can open it. And we've had a lot of dance families who actually help recruit for us because they want to see somebody be successful and they don't want just anybody at the front desk helping their kids. So it really helps to do that. The other places that I notice a lot of people don't use, they're college job boards. There's a website called Handshake, and many universities and colleges use this. And you create an employer profile, you can list jobs for free. They have a sponsored option as well. And you can communicate right on that platform, get resumes from college students, whether they're in undergrad or graduate school as well. So that's a great resource.
This is awesome. I know I'm a favorite. One of the favorite places that I like to go is back to our alumni group for the college that I graduated from. So if you're in a college town or you feel like it's a good fit for you to go back to the department that you graduated through, definitely do that. We've gotten a lot of help that way. I want to go back, Ginger, talking about what you shared about inviting your staff, your current staff and your families and the students to think about somebody that might be a good fit. This is a great place to make sure that your mission statement is really known throughout your entire studio, because you're going to want somebody that's going to fit in well. So if they're recommended, they're going to be saying, well, you know what? This is our mission statement and these are our core values. And these are the things that we really look for in our studio. So if you think it's a good fit, you should apply. And then do you recommend using some AI tools for job descriptions?
I do, with a caution. And the reason why I say that is AI is good for, I would say, helping you finish sentences, but it should not be a press the button and copy and paste. And here's why. There's so much AI at play right now. People can pick out AI. I see it right now on emails and Facebook posts. I can tell when it's been written by AI at this point. I've seen that language. I've seen the emojis at the end of every sentence. And it's not really your voice. It's not your brand voice. It's not representing your culture and how your studio looks and feels and the vibe of it. And yes, you can put those prompts into a Chat GPT or Bard, and it's still not the same as a real human writing it. And you want to go from what is it that you need and how you interact with your staff and use that to write this job description, not just use AI. AI is like bouncing ideas off a friend, but you wouldn't copy verbatim what your friend said.
Exactly. And I definitely second that. I use it a lot to prompt ideas or to elaborate on an idea or give me a suggestion on something that I haven't thought of yet. So I think that would be a great way to use some AI tools as you're drafting your description, and it might pop something in there that you didn't even think about. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's elaborate on that. And I didn't think to ask for this in the job description. So use it with caution. There's nothing wrong with trying to get some ideas or letting it maybe change the wording a bit on a sentence that you need a little help crafting, but definitely don't copy paste and read everything very clearly. You can start to train them to really work in your voice for your studio. That's true. But again, let's not copy paste, because you and I are definitely seeing it around the socials and on websites. So great. Let's talk about some measurement tools and things for the studio. And I want you to share with our listeners how this comes into play with hiring and retaining faculty and staff.
So we're kind of talking about key performance indicators, also known as KPIs. It sounds complicated. It's not that bad. So here's an example. You have somebody who works at your front desk. Their job is to answer the phones and respond to emails in 24 hours during business hours. Okay, so they're going to do that. They're going to answer those calls, they're going to answer those emails, and they're going to do that. And for them, without any guidance, they don't know what success is. So they might feel like we have nothing in our inbox and our voicemails are clean and I've done a great job, which is fine. If you employ the KPI system, you're saying, okay, this is a performance indicator. So for me, I might say, you're at the front desk and you're handling the emails and phone calls. And the reason for that is we want to get students to set up their trial class and get them enrolled. And so I might look at, all right, how many students on average enroll over a particular period? And I'm just throwing out a number, for example, let's say it's 5 students a week who are either setting up a trial class or enrolling. You can set the bar at your KPI as the office person is to answer the phone calls and emails, and your goal is 6 people per week signed up for trial classes or they're enrolled. I set it at 6 so that even if they don't miss it, they're still hitting what we're actually doing, right? And when somebody is told that, it's more specific. They know the purpose of why they're responding to the emails and phone calls, and it might inform them a little bit more about what they're doing, right? So before they're just like, I see success because I cleared out all the inboxes. But now they're like, wait a second, I called that lady and she didn't call me back. Let me go reach out to her. Let me send her an email. It gets their wheels turning like, I really am trying to get these 6 people. So what do I need to do to follow up? Well, maybe I'm going to make sure I eat a cookie first before I call because I need to just sound a little extra happy. It's those little things. And hey, I'm having a crappy day. I'll do the emails right now. But when I feel a little better, then I'll get on the phone with people because I don't want to have a bad attitude. So a key performance indicator will help your team understand what the expectation is, what success looks like, and it makes it really crystal clear. There's no like, oh, I didn't know when you have those things in place.
That is such a great explanation of that. Knowing your why is so important. We talk about this a lot with our membership, and knowing your why. And you mentioned that specifically when they sit down to their job or they come into the studio, they know exactly why they're there because you've been so specific with them. One of the trainings I used to do years ago, we did a lot of phone answering. This was before texting really came into play. And I would always share with them, answer the phone with a smile because you can actually hear the smile through the phone. So like you mentioned, maybe they need a little cookie or a gummy bear or something that like gives them a little extra sugar and confidence when they answer the phones. But it's really important because you can hear that smile through what they're doing. So great. KPIs, key performance indicators, so important, Ginger. Thank you. That was a really great way of explaining that. And I love how you tied it into the success and how it actually can encourage them to do more and actually think about extra things that they can do, following up with people, all that good stuff. Great. So now let's talk about the big thing, avoiding headaches. We know that with staff and with faculty, and the more people you manage, the bigger the headaches are going to be. And when I call them headaches, honestly, it's just probably more of management of things to do, making sure that you're on top of things. So they may not all be headaches, but there's definitely a lot to manage when it comes to faculty and staff. So what can we do to help delegate effectively and well, and then just kind of wrap it all together and avoid some pitfalls?
So the first thing that I would say is you can do an assessment of who they are and their personality. Get to know your staff. They're in relationship with you, and then that translates into their relationship with your customers. So when you have staff, your job is not direct delivery a lot of times to your customers anymore. It's you treat your staff well, your staff treats your customers well. So get to know your staff. One of the things you can do is a personality profile. There's so many right now. There's 16 personalities, which you mentioned. There's the DISC personality. I do the analytic, amiable, driver expressive profiles. And when you do that, the things that are really helpful about getting this understanding of personalities is, one, not everyone's going to have the same personality. Two, not everyone communicates the same. So some people, they can take a loud and crazy environment and you're shouting out stuff. Other people are like, ooh, they shut down and they don't do well in that kind of environment. So understanding what makes them tick, what motivates them. Are they a relational person or are they more task oriented? And then also, what are ways that you can better manage them? How can you change your approach based on who you're talking to so that your message gets across? And it's not just about offending them or not, it's about understanding them. And it's no different than if you have children in your dance class or your own children. You don't just treat them all exactly the same. This one needs extra attention for this, or this one, they need to explain it in a certain way, or this one, you got to write down bullet points and follow up. So get to know those things, and it will really help you understand how they work. And this is what's super fun. At one point in my organization, we were heavy on people who were expressive, and we had literally one person who was analytic. Well, that was a problem because they were chatterboxes and they liked to do their own thing. And they weren't concerned about relationships and they weren't concerned about these other things. And so they were amazing creative people, but we didn't have enough people who were analytics to be like, okay, we got to make sure these people pay their bill. We need to make sure that we track and get our reports done and things like that. And so when you do this for your entire team, you're able to see, are we balanced, or do we need to try to get people who are different personalities so that we have a balance of all the different personality styles in our organization?
Yes. And to tack on to that, this also gives you a great opportunity. If you see something that is not coming, like they're not finishing a project, or there's some sort of stumbling block and it becomes an issue time after time after time, and you're wondering, like, why is this not getting done? Or again, I'm having to speak to this person about this particular task or project. This is a good idea to go back and understand their personality, because you may have them in a position, or you may be assigning them something that's really just not a good fit for them. So like you said, it shows you where you may be heavy or light on different personalities, and the true taskmasters, versus the really creatives in the group. You want to have a nice balance. But again, where you might come up against something that is a stumbling block and one of those head scratching moments, you're like, why is this just not getting done well or the right way, or not getting done period at all? This may be one of those tasks or projects that just is not in that person's wheelhouse, or, maybe they just need more education, or maybe it just needs to go to somebody else at that point. So
definitely.
All right. And then Ginger, so this is again, yet going back to our beginning of the podcast, talking about systems and having them in place. I have a feeling that's where you're going to elaborate a little bit more right now, is how important those systems are so that we can avoid the headaches.
Yeah. So the same way that you create the processes to drive that position description, and then you create your key performance indicators, then you need to make sure that you have that for all the roles and things that you want to delegate. There's nothing worse than delegating work to someone and then not being clear about how they're supposed to do it, what success looks like, what's their deadlines or timelines related to it. What information do they need? What resources do they need? Do they have the right logins? Are you actually giving up logins, or in getting the software that they need, giving them access? And so when you do that, you want to make sure that the entire thing is a system, right? So if we go back to that costume example, right? If I had somebody delegating that role to someone, I need to give them access to my studio software. They need access to all the student information so that they can enter the sizes. They probably need logins to our vendors so that they can see and place orders. They're going to need a key to the building to receive those deliveries. Like, all those things are those systems you want to have in place so that people don't start the job and just make things up as they go along, or Sometimes they'll ask the wrong person for the answer. So you want to make sure you do that. And this is so important. And I tell people this all the time when they're like, staff is driving me crazy. I say, okay, what training did you provide them? Did you actually show them how? Anytime you delegate something to someone, expect that it's going to take time up front that you have to invest in training that person. You might even that first time around, that first year, you have that time and you're going to do it and they're going to be right next to you and learn how you do it. Because if you just give it away, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And you may or may not like it. You might like it in the short term because you're not doing it. But then when something goes sideways, you're like, wait a second, that's not what I wanted. Again, you have to train them. And that training can be any number of ways. I've done just a simple written checklist. This is the things that you need to do. I've done a sit down and, like I said, someone's literally sitting next to me and I'm showing them how they do it. And the other thing, for some things, it just is easier to talk it through. So I just bust out my phone and I make a video. This is how you clean the filters. And I just take a camera around and show them and share that video. So get training figured out and done. Plan for the investment in time up front to train them. And that will save you the headache on the back end when something doesn't go as you expect.
This is great, Ginger. Talking about investing, this is really and truly an investment. And if you set yourself up for success right from the start with your systems, your processes, the trainings, that investment is going to pay off in spades. And I just wanted to mention too, you talked about the ways to train them. Don't forget that screen recordings are really great too. So if it's an admin type position and it's heavy on the computer, don't hesitate to have the person that's doing that role currently take screen recordings as they go through. There's Loom is a great tool to use that you can do a screen recording and that video of the actual steps and where you hit and click and what you do in those instances. So I love the idea of taking the phone around the studio and just showing them where things are and how to do them. That's perfect. All right, Ginger, this has been awesome. I know we mentioned a lot of resources, so check the show notes. We're going to link out to all the resources that we shared today. And then before we wrap up, and I have a great announcement about the course that you actually have, and we're going to tell people how to find that. What would you like to say in closing and wrap us up and bring us home with your studio staffing solutions so that everybody can feel really good and empowered and really great about going out and finding and retaining awesome people for your studio?
I'm going to say this because this always is the second thought after someone says, I want to hire someone to do this. The second thought is, can I afford to do it? There are some people who say, well, you can't afford not to, but I'm going to be more specific. One is, it's hard to ever feel true freedom in your business if you're doing everything yourself. DIY is only going to take you so far. And two, you can do things your own way. You don't need to hire full-time staff to do these various things that you want to get off of your plate. You can tap into the resources that are already in your studio. You might have some part-time teachers who are looking for a few extra hours a week who can pick something up. You can hire someone for a season. You can do it for a contracted amount of time, and you can do it part-time, ultra part-time. I have someone who works on stuff for my studio 4 hours a week. She's an amazing cleaning person, by the way. But for me, that was a role that I had in the office manager job. And I moved it and pulled it out as a separate thing as a cleaning person. And again, 4 hours a week. So when it comes to, can I afford it? Make it something that fits your organizational budget where you are right now. And what you're going to find is by having your systems in place and staff in place to do things and freeing your time up, you might actually be making more money and more revenue in your company because you're looking at the big picture now. You're not in the weeds of the day in, day out daily operations of your business.
So Ginger, you have done the great job of putting together a course, and it's called Studio Staffing Success. It's in our learning library. So be sure to go down in the show notes, whether you're on Apple or you're listening in on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you may be, go find the show notes or click out. We have everything that you can possibly need as far as resourcing. So go find that. We also have a discount code for our podcast listeners today. So thanks for being so generous with that. We're going to link that course in the show notes with the great discount code that you're offering. So thank you. And Ginger, with that, I'm going to say this has been awesome. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that you've been here today. The wealth of knowledge that you bring and the way you speak about your staff and your studio just shows how much you care. And it just means so much that you're sharing your expertise with us. So thank you, Ginger.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Dance Studio 411. Visit us online at dancestudio411.com for more great resources and to submit a question for a future episode. Our number one goal is to help you build a successful dance studio business and keep your passion for dance alive.